To begin with, the idea of having a large freshwater lake in the middle of a major city is unique. There really isn't anything like this in North America. And then that it's connected to the salt water, so it brings all those activities in from the ocean, makes it even more interesting. So there's really so much going on in the lake. It's a very active, diverse place. There's shipyards right next to multi-million-dollar floating homes and mega yachts. You can see software engineers on their paddle boards right next to a place that does training for underwater construction and commercial diving. All of the key elements of Seattle's economic history can be seen somewhere on Lake Union. Seattle started out with timber and sawmills. One of the challenges of the timber business is that logs are really heavy, and to move them around in an area that didn't have much infrastructure was difficult, except of course you could float them on the water. So sawmills tended to be located along waterways, and Lake Union had several sawmills along it. Seattle was always a big center of shipbuilding and boat building in the fishing industry, and these industries took root along the lake with shipyards and fishing industry headquarters, and they're still there today. So you can see lots of elements of the Seattle lifestyle in Lake Union. The most obvious one is the floating homes. There are hundreds of these homes. They started out as very inexpensive places for workers to live. They'd find some logs and put a raft together and build a shack on top of it. These have now evolved to be very prized homes, many selling for millions of dollars. The lake is also lined with marinas. Seattle is a major center for boating and yachting, and it's a very popular place for people to have boats, and many of those boats have people living on them. The liverboard lifestyle is very popular in Lake Union. There are several rowing clubs along the lake. Crew racing has always been a popular sport in the Seattle area, and not just for the young people at college, but people from all ages join rowing clubs, and there's several of them on the lake. You can rent sailboats, kayaks, paddle boards, and even hot tub boats and electric boats. And all of these will be out on the lake on a summer afternoon, making the place completely chaotic. The South Lake Union area has become internationally famous now as a major center of technology businesses. This all started out with the opportunity of some very underutilized land back in the 1990s. There was a project called the Seattle Commons to create a major park in the South Lake Union area, sort of Seattle's Central Park. Now that didn't work out, but what it did do is create a spark that resulted in a lot of redevelopment of that underutilized land. We were very fortunate to have Paul Allen, one of the co-founders of Microsoft, involved in that process, and he began to develop real estate, very high quality real estate, both homes and commercial development that really became attractive to technology firms, Amazon in particular, but also biotechnology firms and branches of the University of Washington. The role of public policy is important here in several ways. First of all, and maybe most importantly, Seattle and Washington State have very strict rules on the use of shorelines. Shorelines can only be used for water-dependent uses. If this law wasn't in place, you can be guaranteed that Lake Union would simply be lined with condominiums. But because of that, it still has viable shipyards and construction businesses and marinas and boat yards and all of the things that depend on the water. Another key is adaptive reuse of buildings. The steam power plant that was converted into a biotechnology research facility. The gas plant on the north end that is now Gasworks Park but retains all of the old machinery, which is really interesting. Museum of History and Industry was built inside an old military armory. So all of these things have been left in place to leave the heritage activities but find new uses for them. An important part of the public policy picture, and somewhat counterintuitively, is that the area has been largely left alone. It's tempting with a place like that to try to create a big master plan and to control all the things that happen there. But the city, in its wisdom, has largely left it alone to evolve organically. It's important to keep the old and encourage the new and allow them all to develop kind of on top of each other. We don't want displacement, but we also don't want to preserve things that are no longer viable. So it's that delicate balance of keeping the old and bringing in the new. We've managed to have the coexistence of uses that would otherwise seem to be in conflict. We have industrial uses. We have lifestyle uses, we have recreation uses, we have float planes. All of these things are existing together in a way that they somehow seem to get along.